Ah man, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, good evening, good evening. Shalom, good people, welcome to it. It is another episode of Liberty and Friends. Goodness me, it's been a while. Uh, I've become so accustomed to saying good morning because of my new daily weekday show. A lot of you are quite aware about Ivuganazo. And I'm hoping you guys are enjoying that content, as I said. With that being said, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Please hit that like button. Do it right now. It doesn't hurt at all. And as the numbers grow, hey man, consider sharing this show. Help me grow this content as we begin to build the Big Daddy Liberty Show as an alternative media space. As we get those numbers going, welcome to it. As I said, my name is Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. And of course, as usual on Liberty and Friends, I don't come alone. I am with the Friends panel, who I will introduce in a moment. On tonight's episode of Liberty and Friends, as always, we look at the news week that was. What got you interested, talking, angry, happy, annoyed, frustrated? And if you're the ANC, what got you into your schizophrenic type mode where you were Jekyll and not Hyde this week, acting like an opposition party and not a governing party? We're going to get that into that in a moment. And of course, we'll look at other issues that dominated the week. Specifically, there you go, there comes that word, that double word, Zama-Zama. We're going to have a chat about those illegal miners and find out how this week arguably has been a bit of a tough week for them. Not that I care or hold any quarter for them, as both communities and the police have finally raised their voice, or at least the police have raised their voice insofar as doing something about these thuggish, ruggish miners, illegal miners out in the West Rand and other parts of the country. We'll also look at that issue of PRASA. Hey man, if you watch my daily show, Vuganazo, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where 3,000 ghost employees have been paid by Ufile Mbalula's PRASA for who knows how many years now, which is an indictment in the way I view it, given the unemployment numbers in this country. Imagine if 3,000 unemployed people had been given those opportunities and been drawing those salaries. Maybe our economic situation wouldn't look as bad. We're going to also, as we wrap up tonight's show, cover two more issues. And without further ado, let me actually bring on my friends panel who will help me unpack these issues and more on tonight's episode of Liberty and Friends. Good evening, good evening. Welcome to it. Hit that like button and let's get the conversation going. First up, I'm going to bring on a homie who's been very vocal about a one asshat of a police minister, the Bheki Cele that is, who himself, by the way, Bheki Cele, has been under a lot of pressure this week as ordinary community members emulate what this man did a while ago. I'm talking, of course, about Ian Cameron. There he is. Ian, good evening.
How's it, Sichle? It's awesome to be with you. I think this is a crucial discussion tonight. I really think we need to unpack a bit more, especially about the latter mentioned person that you spoke of. I really think he's, well, I'll put it bluntly, I think he has blood on his hands, and I think we really need to discuss it tonight.
Absolutely. We'll definitely get into that in a moment. That, of course, is Ian Cameron, the head honcho over at Action Society. I forgot to link the details in the descriptor. I'll do that, of course, after the show. And, of course, there is that wonderful three-legged porky pot that we call the Manpatria podcast. Tonight, I have two of those legs. The one, of course, is Upra Dumo Denga, the head honcho over there. Dumo, good evening, Bob.
Hi, Sile. Thanks for having me on. It's highly appreciated. And yes, looking forward to a great discussion tonight.
Absolutely. And of course, the other leg, the co-host of the Manpatria show, a firm favorite here on the BDL show, Koketso Resane. There he is. Koketso, good evening.
Evening, Sile. Evening, Ian, Dumo. Yeah, let's have a solid chat. I'm with solid gents tonight, so this is bound to be good.
Absolutely. Good evening to it, Baba. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me just fix my little camera here. I have a bit of curtain in that screen, but hey. All right, guys. I want to begin here because for me, it's been the most exciting news and perhaps news which has dominated the week, if anything, especially if I look at what I've been talking about on Ivuga Nazo, and that's the sudden attention being placed on the Zama-Zamas. Of course, we know the genesis of that. The genesis of that was that horrific attack on 22, I'm assuming, young people who were shooting a music video, of which 8 of those were brutally raped, gang raped, in fact, by Zama-Zamas in that part of the world, effectively blowing this issue up into the news cycle. Ian, I'm going to begin with you because you've been quite vocal on this issue insofar as rightly pointing out that the Zama-Zamas are not a new phenomenon. The notion of illegal mining, coupled with, unfortunately, the illegal immigration that sees individuals from neighboring countries flock to these former mining towns in order to pan for opportunity, is causing a massive problem.
Absolutely. So I think to give context, obviously I welcome the arrests that have been made. I think it's a step in the right direction. We should welcome that. But in all honesty, Sikla, I don't think 300 or 400 arrests is even it's literally a needle in a haystack. If you think about it, let's take something like Shaft 9 in Benoni. Those types of illegal mines run with literally thousands of Zamas on site, almost 24/7. And remember, it's not just a group of people mining, it's a whole network of people. There are some that, for example, work above ground, others below ground, others are armed protection. So there's a whole mixture, a whole group dynamic that needs to be understood. And this ridiculous so-called, let's call it a parade that the police went on, where they supposedly raiding these hostels. It's not that I'm saying it shouldn't be done. It should, but it's not the long-term solution. Having a community in Bizo is not a long-term solution. That's what we need. And I think, it's almost as there's this supposed epiphany from the Minister of Police and others that, wow, do we really have these Zamas? It's nothing new in a place like, and I keep on referring to Benoni because a place like Pitfontein, those areas are renowned for Zama-Zama murders. They are renowned for crimes committed by these groups of people. A place like Welkom in the Free State, exactly the same thing. There are literally thousands of illegal miners operating there. Randfontein, Western area, Krugersdorp, Carltonville, and so the list goes on. Point I'm trying to make is this is nothing new. It's been like this for years. And as you said earlier, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but the ANC coming out almost as opposition now is an absolute joke. I've personally been involved with operations where we flew drones, for example, for the police, for reconnaissance, for Zama operations. And the police on ground level have previously told us that they cannot take on those guys because they are totally overpowered just in terms of they're outgunned. It's that simple. So, yeah, we can still color it in a bit, but the point is it's nothing new.
It's a frightening prospect to hear someone say this, insofar as I mentioned, this is not a new issue, despite what the likes of Bheki Cele would like to present, right? We're doing things like, we're holding a community in Bizo, he was posited, the one he held in Krugersdorp this week, a community crime in Bizo on this issue of the Zama-Zamas and broader issues, of course, but the Zama-Zamas being the central issue. But the funny thing to me, and again, I don't mean funny as in haha, but funny as in, oh my goodness, there it is. The truth is in your face. Ian, I'm going to stick with you for a moment again, only because you're someone who did exactly the same thing that these communities of Krugersdorp and surrounding did to the minister, and that is confront him with the reality. Confront him with the reality of what it is to be a resident in this country, a citizen in this country, terrorized by the specter of crime, in this case, crime that these former mining communities face. And he sat there and he had to eat it. Only this time he couldn't say, shut up.
Yeah, so look, to be very honest, let's call a spade a spade. I think if I wasn't a white guy in Gugulethu that day, nothing would have happened, because the 12 people that spoke before me, it just shows you how he disregards people in poor communities. And funny enough, people are always so quick, to pull the race card. But he was actually the one disregarding the very black people that live in that area that he supposedly advocates for. But anyway, so look, I think it's crucial that communities are giving them stick, and I really think they are. I mean, I've watched a few of the engagements over the last few weeks, and it was quite impressive to see that people are saying, hey, we're not going to just stand up and salute you and call you general because you appointed yourself in a position. We're not just going to stand back and wait for you to come and dictate to us about what you're supposedly going to do. But Sika, I think he left himself very exposed in this last weekend. And the reason for that is the following. He said that they want the Zamas to come and show them where they're taking their gold. So he literally confirmed what we have been saying for the past 5 years, even the past 10 years, that crime intelligence is zero. And he also confirms that there must be police involvement. Because let's just humor me for a moment. Let's pretend like the minister doesn't know where the gold is going. Let's just pretend that that is the case, okay? It is physically impossible that no one in the police knows. So he literally, over this last weekend, and his ridiculous imbizo, he basically admitted to everything we've accused them of: being involved in corruption, being involved in crime, helping the Zama-Zamas, protecting Zama-Zamas. I've seen drone footage, okay, about 4 years ago. I'm not going to mention the private security company now, but it was West Rand footage, okay? Very funny, actually. I don't think for the guy on the ground. Let me share the story briefly. Where these Zamas were standing protection, and the security company was doing reconnaissance with a drone from very high up, and they suddenly switched on a spotlight above these Zamas, and the one got a fright and he shot the other one in the leg by mistake. So then you literally just saw all these people run with that, like in scatter in all directions, with one like limping around with his leg. But so I mean, we laugh about it now, but the point is just that if you look at the firearms those guys carry, they don't walk around just with 38 specials and air rifles. They walk around with AKs. Some of them operate very well. They walk around with R5s, R4s. A lot of them are state-issued South African firearms. So Cele's exposed himself. He's confirmed what we all have been saying the whole time. SAPS is, at this moment, a severely broken entity in South Africa. And if we don't have drastic change in terms of leadership, nothing is going to change. It's going to get worse. Mark my words here tonight that we will have the highest murder rate this coming financial year than what we've had in the last 2 decades.
Yes, Koketso, as I listen to this, I'm struck by 2 things. Number one, and I was trying to find the file footage now, but it's not loading. So I'm going to try and find it through my Twitter account and play it here. The residents who were at that imbizo, that public meeting, residents, of course, who live in areas which are either former mining towns or actual mining towns, terrorized by Zama-Zama, didn't mince their words. They said, "Hey, chief," and they looked him square in the face. "You are asleep. You are useless." I mean, they used much more colorful language. I'm being PC here just for the sake of the show. Nobody has time for a useless asshat of a minister anymore. People are speaking out. And in my book, and I know Ian won't accept the credits, but for me, I think Ian was one of those people who really encouraged people to boldly speak truth to these people who parade their power in our face as if they're doing something for us. It's about time, Koketso.
Yeah, it is about time. Being one of those guys that, my hands aren't too dirty. I've worked corporate jobs pretty much my entire career. But there's a saying that there's 2 types of people in the office, right? There's those who have meetings, and then there's those who actually get work done. And to me, it's seeming like Bheki Cele and maybe even his predecessors and those who are higher up at SAPS, they prefer to have meetings and organize effectively meetings. They use colorful words to really rename what is essentially just a meeting. And that's their idea of actually getting things done. What's actually needed is some on-the-ground work that needs to be done. And there are there's no shortage of willing bodies and willing hands to actually get what needs to be done. Consider also that community members who are victims of crime are willing to actually pitch in here and ensure their own safety, particularly for those of themselves and their families. But they aren't actually empowered to do that, not at the very least by the South African Police Service. And that, for me, is really just a low-hanging fruit to say the minister, to save his skin, if for no other reason, just to save his skin, I would suggest that he perhaps start looking into a program where he can get communities involved legally to aid local police stations across the country, and look towards maybe making a solution that makes sure that people can keep each other safe, assisted by the police. We're not seeing that. Instead, we're just seeing meetings about meetings, really, the usual platforms where promises can be dished out, and it's really unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable that the minister, not just the minister, but even commissioners, the national commissioner, the deputy national commissioner, the generals, all of those people, they're really not willing to actually take to heart what people are actually bringing to them and decide that, look, let's try and make a way forward here, and let's actually come up with something feasible and tangible to ensure the safety of communities. It's such a low-hanging fruit, and even if you want to politic around it and say that, right, we will do this as a means of gathering votes, they're not even doing that. And for me, that just tells us that we really are on our own. And thanks to all the people who are actually speaking out, because much of the stories remain unheard. People become victims and then decide to rather keep quiet about it because nothing ever gets done about it. But again, the more these stories are shared, the more I think people will be galvanized into saying, right, we are clearly on our own, and let's start doing something, build organizations, build up your communities, really start taking it upon yourself to ensure the safety of yourself and your loved ones, preferably with the police involved, so it can also receive some form of legal backing.
Absolutely. And Dumo, just before I come to you, I just want to see if I can have this thing play, because Ian pointed something out, Dumo, which was absolutely important to mention, because we sometimes call them Zama-Zamas, and the expression Zama-Zama has a little cute undertone to it, if you didn't know what was behind this issue, because these guys who are trying to, they're like gold miners, the gold rush of the 19. But that's exactly it, as Ian is saying.
Sorry.
And I want to show.
Sorry, but they are bloody terrorists. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. And what I want to do is actually show a very image of what exactly Ian was mentioning here. When he says, pardon me, these guys are armed to the teeth. They're not here to play around. Let's just see if this thing plays. Okay, it's uploading. Maybe whilst it's uploading, oh, there it is. And Koketso, let me maybe come back to you very quickly, because I don't speak fluent, in their case, Sesotho. Just a broad sense of what the guy was talking about, if it's important.
Well, to put it very simply, without directly translating, he's basically showboating that he's got guns with him, and effectively that he can do what he likes, really. It's a way of basically saying, right, I'm the head of this group, these are my guys, and we do what we like, give or take.
And it's that culture, Dumo. It's that attitude, if you will, which expresses and indeed calcifies the point Ian made, which is these guys know two things. Number one, they literally are the biggest gang in some cases, and indeed some of the more well-armed gangs in an area. They're going to do things with impunity. Number two, no one from law enforcement is going to stop them. It's that attitude which they are keenly aware of, which they take with them into these communities, which can see something like 8 women being gang raped by 8 or 10 men at a time.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you saw the guns that are there, guys. I mean, that looked like a Call of Duty loadout, honestly. I mean, I saw a sniper, I saw a marksman rifle, I even saw a shotgun and an AK. And I'm pretty sure the AK they have is an automatic, not even a semi-automatic. Because I know in South Africa, to get an automatic AK-47, you need a special license. But this is the thing, you know, when lawlessness is at this level, it means that the police can't do anything. And this is a very sad situation. And also, I don't even know if those guns that they have, were they stolen or they imported or whatever. But the reality is that it's a very, very bad situation. Then on top of that, what you have now is that when Ian was talking about the drone footage that they'll send, and then the cops will say, well, sorry, you know, we can't do anything about it because look at the guns they have. We're just going to send ourselves to die. And this is and you know what the worst thing is? The criminals know it. They know the police can't do anything. And this is a very, very sad situation in my opinion. So, and also the woman that also got raped by them as well. Again, when they act like in that manner, it just means that they know that there really aren't any repercussions for it. So, well, effectively, of course, in the law does make these things illegal, but no one is enforcing it. So it's a really, really, really terrible situation to be in South Africa, where you've got criminals who are doing what they're doing right now with confidence and even like recording a video, right? And speaking, you know, I'm like, my word. I mean, I thought criminals like to operate in the dark. I mean, that was during the day, that video, you know, so that makes things like, it just shows the level of criminality and lawlessness that exists. And I can imagine the communities that are living there. They must be living in fear every day.
Absolutely. And let me show a clip that speaks to that exact point. This young woman who, my goodness. Sorry, guys. Unfortunately, my I know it's not an excuse, viewers. I literally have a bit of a glitch here. But I will play it because it's so critically important. This young lady who stood up to Bheki Cele, stood up to the PR exercise that the police minister was trying to sort of have here, to sort of posit himself as, oh, you know, I'm doing something about this. But she makes a very clear point as soon as it plays. And maybe whilst I'm sorting it out, how about you do me a favor, please, and hit that like button as I quickly sort out this little footage. There it is. That's one little piggy. And there's the other. Okay.
You're trying to clean this to us, but to us, this is a norm. This is what we experience every single day. There's a number of deaths in West Village reported. There's a number of women raped, gang raped. And if those women were raped by 10 men, that's nothing. We've got women that have been raped by over 20 men. One woman going through that. I am a victim of that. I know what it feels like. I know what it's like to. I've seen the wrath of the Zama-Zamas. West Village is under siege. When is your office going to realize that West Village is in the hands of trigger-happy beings? We love like foreigners in our own country. We've got a curfew from 6 till 5 o'clock. Even during the day, you can't walk freely without having an escort. You can't go to the store and buy bread without having an escort because they are there. This grass that you are talking about, ask the mayor. How many times have we asked the mayor? Please, at least do not give them a conducive environment. Please do not give them a place to hide. How many times have we engaged with the mayor's office that at least put up street lights? If you go to, I actually invite you to go to West Village now. It is a ghost town. It's like there's no people living there. And there's people living in West Village. We're talking about taxpayers. We're talking about voters in this country that had put you in that office. But you're not saying anything about the police that are in the capacity, the police that are in the payroll of these people. Because we can't run to the police as the police themselves, who sworn to serve and protect the nation, are not doing that. Instead, they are handing us over on a silver platter. Who knows, by the time I get home, I'll be waiting for my assessors by the gate. They'll be waiting for me. So do not I do understand from your point of view trying to clean this up, but up until we see it in West Village, up until we experience it, then we will be able to say thank you. But right now, I am speaking for all those deaths that have been reported in West Village. I'm speaking for every woman that has gone through rape in West Village. I'm speaking for every a child of 4-year-old minister is able to narrate these gruesome stories.
Speaking truth to power, as I said, Ian, at the beginning of this insert, that was a taste of what, for instance, then that was actually during the time of the rape itself, but that same energy, that same direct tone, if you will, was taken to Bheki Cele at that community in Bizo. But I want to move us on for a moment, not away from this issue, but just linked to it. The point she makes in the end, towards the end of that video, which is the difficulty of these community members going to SAPS or to the police because the police themselves are involved, saw what happened this week, which is the community of Kagiso literally saying to hell initially with trusting the cops, and then fortunately or unfortunately, depends how you want to view this, taking matters into their own hand, shutting down Kagiso and literally going shack to shack, to find the perpetrators of these things. And unfortunately, I must say this because it is an unfortunate thing. One of these alleged Zama-Zamas was murdered in a mob justice type thing. And actually, when the community then eventually did bring the cops in, 21 arrests were affected.
Yeah, Sikle, if I can jump in there, it absolutely really makes me sick when I again today see commentary of the Minister of Police saying, I hear from the community. Bull, he knows this stuff. He absolutely knows about it. Last week, let me tell you guys a story quickly, okay? We had a press conference on Tuesday for a lady. Her name is Janelle Latu. Okay, she was severely beaten. She was beaten to the point where they had to put steel plates in her arm, okay, to make her hand function properly again. And it happened time and time again by her then boyfriend. Then it was reported to SAPS. The first investigating officer, a female SAPS member, said to her, do you understand the amount of paperwork we would need to go through? Shouldn't we just mediate? So that was the first round. Second round, she manages to open the case. We got involved with the investigation, long story short, and the court process. And just more than a week ago, about 10 days ago, SAPS informs us the docket is missing. Okay. They didn't scan the docket, all of that. We make 25 phone calls to Delft police station in Cape Town. 25 phone calls. They don't answer one of them. And no one comes back with feedback. Call the detective branch, everything. The poor detectives actually doing the work do their best. They are working with the resources that they have. But something's wrong on senior level. So here's the thing. On Tuesday, we go and we do a press conference. I name and shame them. I then put the picture on the screen, literally showing the calls that we have made, okay? And miraculously, on Friday morning, we get a call. The docket has been found. And guys, that is the reality that so many people face. The amount of cases, I'm telling you, just in terms of gender-based violence, the amount of cases where women eventually withdraw cases because of the frustration that they feel and the lack of support that they get on station level is remarkable. And you know what the worst part is? Some of the GBV desks at these stations, and we're running up, the day after tomorrow's Women's Day, okay? Some of the GBV desks have literally told us that they have started doing mediation because they can't handle the case capacity. That is the point where we're at with gender-based violence in the police.
Ian, I listen to this and my heart breaks because, and Koketso, I'm going to come back to you. We can see why our communities are absolutely taking matters into their own hands. And really, kudos to them insofar as that realization, a collective realization perhaps by ordinary South Africans, that no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save you. You've got to actually start doing things on your own. Unfortunately, those things can get out of hand, and we saw that, unfortunately, at Kagiso. But in a broader sense, I think there's a collective understanding that people need to organize themselves. Let me be precise and specific, and I'm going to play an insert in this regard. That same community of Kagiso, listen to how this gentleman clearly articulates what's at stake here for him and his family.
Sicela ubaba ucele aze la sizokhulumisana kunye naye, and really now moving forward asizojika la and sizoqhubeka ngalento le. So we are ready to give up our lives because of ingane zethu eziningi sisenkingeni. So imindeni yethu isemkingeni. Njengamanje mabaxoshwe le West Rand baxoshwe kwi-mine zonke bangena house to house. So umama lo shona izolo really ungenele kwakhe endlini. So we are very, very, very much angry. So sizimisela ukuthi singanikezana ngempilo zethu ukuthi kwenzakale lokho. Sicela ubaba ucele aze la.
Pardon me there, guys. Again, Koketso, nothing more I can say. This man clearly articulated, I'm willing to give up my life if it means broadly restoring law and order, making sure my family effect is able to live in this area in peace and quiet. And you can see the people around him are very much on code.
Yeah, proper manly man there. I know it's not popular these days, but yeah, he's a mensch. He's actually standing up for his family, his community, etc. The big question to ask here is that you have to ask yourself: do our policing cluster actually care? So let's put aside the discussion around their competence now for a little bit. Let's actually just come down human to human, citizen to citizen, and let's ask ourselves if they actually care. Do they care about what is actually going on in the very communities where they are, particularly with your officers and your uniformed personnel in the police station? When victims come in through the door trying to report a crime, trying to do their part at the very least to try get some semblance of justice, and then the person on the other side of the counter is going to complain to you about the paperwork they have to fill out, is going to outright even ignore you, whether it's a phone call or even if it's in person. There's countless stories of someone going to a police station and then being ignored. And then you're then told by the officer ignoring you that, oh no, you didn't greet them properly, or some ridiculous excuse like that. So let's put aside the incompetence for a little bit and ask ourselves if they actually care. And if we have to have that honest conversation, I think the answer would be a clear they don't. They don't care. But who does care? Your family member cares, your neighbor cares about you, your friends care about you. And if it's going to come down to that, they'll actually pick up the mantle and decide to offer a semblance of protection on your behalf. It goes beyond the Zama-Zama, it goes beyond the gender-based violence, even things like petty crimes. If someone snatches your cell phone in the street, you're never getting that phone back through the actions of police. You'll get it back through the actions of other walkers on the street who then decide to do something about it and come to your aid. On that note, if you can find me someone who's actively had their phone recovered by the South African Police Service, I'd like to know about it, because I've never heard of such a thing. You only go to the police station to get the affidavit so you can actually put forward your insurance claim, not because you have a genuine belief that something is going to be done about it. That's just my personal thoughts. But yeah, it does come down to that. Men sticking up for their communities and really doing what men have been doing for time immemorial, even if that's becoming unpopular in this liberal world of ours, of course. But yeah, big ups to the men who are standing up. It's up to us to really make that difference.
Absolutely. In fact, on that particular point, it's funny you use that actual example. For the life of me, I cannot think of the name of the community, which is such an indictment on me, considering what they did for me. but near. For the life of me, I cannot think of the community, and my bad, please, folks. But I stopped at what was an accident scene and helped a young girl, this is a 19-year-old, who had been struck by a vehicle and, severely injured, And a whole community had come out, obviously, to see what's going on, and were busy assaulting the driver who hit this girl, and no one was actually paying attention to this young girl who was injured. I then stop, render first aid, call, this was in Cape Town, in the southern suburbs. For the life of me, I cannot remember the community's name. It's a small little, I'll call it township, which is right next to Polesmore Prison. Ian, I think you're going to chip in there. Can you think of the name of the... Okay, never mind. But in any event, as I'm doing this, as I'm on the phone to, emergency services, Utsotsi, then runs up, snatches my phone, and then runs into the night, into the field, basically, in that area. Now here I'm thinking, oh, great, I've just helped. I'm just trying to help, and this is how I'm treated. That very same community, Westlake, thank you, Fred, that very same community of Westlake, literally, guys, and I'm eternally grateful to them, organized getting my phone back, catching that criminal. In fairness, I did go to the police station, open a case, blah, blah, blah. But it was actually the community that not only caught this guy, recovered my stolen phone, and this guy was eventually handed to SAPS to face the music, which he didn't, because SAPS then said, oh, well, there's not enough evidence, they said. Even though there's a confession and everything, not enough evidence to actually go through with the case. We just don't think it'll be successful. Again, tell me, Dumo, how someone in the community wouldn't be frustrated and actually say, you know what, to hell with SAPS. We would rather organize ourselves. Yes, we still need SAPS, don't get me wrong. I maybe shouldn't have said to hell with SAPS, but rather we're the focal point of what we do for ourselves, and SAPS can meet us halfway if they're willing to do something about it.
Yeah, in a situation like that, when you hear something like that from the police, people are going to, take matters into their own hands. And, it's funny, the police will say, please don't take the law into your own hands. And now, again, I'm not saying that people should not do it. I'm not encouraging that you should take the law into your own hands, but I can explain why people do that. And I've spoken to security guards and about the police, and they'll say, Dumo, there is no police. The police don't exist, right? And I remember there was that, after that mass shooting in Soweto, the police were there and they were parading, and they spoke to one of the members of the community there. And they asked, well, what should happen? And he's like, we must get guns and protect ourselves. That's what he said. And then the reporter was like, no, but the police said they're doing something. And he's like, listen, the police are only here because of that incident. After a few hours, they're going to be gone. And then we have to face these guys again, So that's the reality that people are facing now. They know that the police, when you talk about it, they'll be like, yeah, the police, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, all police departments are bad. There are some good ones. There are some ones that actually do their work. Don't get me wrong. I've been to a few of them. But at the same time, I've been to others that are totally, some would say under-resourced. Some police stations, they're in these, what do you call it, ship containers. That's a police station, guys, in a ship container, right? And I'm not joking. I've seen some of them like that. It's really, really bad. But then there's some police stations that just are state of the art, just looks amazing. You think you walk into a corporate... So this is the thing about it. It's just that people, especially in, let me not say low end, but let's just say, poorer communities, they see it for what it is. And even as much so, they've even in their moral codes, they've even taken it upon, they've even say, no, you should do something about it. Now, I'll give you one story. There was that Louis Theroux documentary. And remember, he spoke to a guy by the name of William, and there was that famous scene where William was getting approached by a mob because he actually attacked someone that tried to get into his property, and he attacked that person in self-defense. And then Louis Theroux's like, no, but you don't have to hit him because you can take him to the police station. He's like, listen, the moment that guy goes to the police station, he takes out $20, gives it to the guy, and the next day you see him at your house again. What you gonna do? And then and then he says, well, you can take him to court. And like, he's got the friends in the court, he's gonna do the same thing. And then at the end of the show, to end of the scene, he says to Louis Theroux, what are you gonna do? And then the show just ends. And that's exactly what it is. Like, it's, and I'm glad they put it in that context, because all the producers for doing that, kudos to them, because they actually showed the reality that many of these poorer communities or rural communities have to face, because they can't do anything. So they have to, it's literally like, I don't know, I wouldn't say anarchy, but it's like a war zone. Yeah.
Now, before I come back to anybody, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, welcome to it. If you've just joined us, you've missed a lot of this conversation. We are doing Liberty and Friends, as always, every Sunday evening, where we wrap up the news week that was. A big focus in this episode so far on the issue of Zama-Zama, and of course the mining communities, which they absolutely terrorize. And I use that word on purpose, indeed, because it is a almost wanton disregard by these mostly illegal immigrants who know they will simply not be caught, armed to the teeth, and indeed unaccountable to anybody except their own greed as they illegally mine for gold, diamonds, and other precious metals. Communities in these parts of the world now beginning to say, you know what, enough is enough. We're standing up for ourselves. Now, with that being said, I'm in conversation with Ian Cameron from Action Society, Koketso, Resane, and Dumo, Denga from the Manpatria show. Make sure you please find them on their respective platforms and interact with them. Good evening, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Guys, we're going to stick with this for a second, but I'm going to change tact and introduce that last point, which is a bit of an elephant in the room, and it's a bit of a topic which pisses off other liberals, whenever I raise this issue, and that is the specter of the illegal immigration part of this whole story. It's been very funny to me to see people try and skirt around it, especially the chattering classes, where the chickens came home to roost, in a sense, where all of that maligning people who've been raising this issue as xenophobes and racists and anti-African or counter-revolutionary, blah, 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 when the facts start coming out that a lot of these Zama-Zamas, violent, terrorizing thugs, are illegal immigrants who come here and basically trying to make a quick buck effectively, and doing so in a criminal and violent manner, suddenly those people are very quiet. Koketso, you don't see them, about EFF, for example, suddenly speaking up when those 8 rapes happened, or as we find out that these are illegal immigrants doing this primarily.
Yeah, you don't, because, and again, I still don't understand exactly why it's so demonized to come out and call out illegal immigration for exactly what it is. You know, your illegal migrant has effectively broken rule number 1 by firstly entering the country in an illegal manner. You know, that means they have no regard for the laws of the land, right from the border to wherever they may end up. They have no regard for it. And you saw communities actually coming out, even on social media, people complaining that some of these guys who have actually been arrested regarding what happened out in the West Rand have actually been given bail. And people are now asking the very basic and good question that, how do you expect a guy who went into the country illegally to honor his bail agreement? You know, genuinely speaking, maybe it's a lovely loophole in our constitution or in our legal system, of course, but yeah, it's a valid question. You know, if a guy won't even so much as come into the country legally by presenting his passport and stating his business at the border post, how do you then, after the fact, arrest him for a crime he has committed and then go ahead and grant him bail and expect him to meet those conditions? Lovely loophole there. But yeah, it's something that has to be said, that people are very afraid. Well, let me not say people, but, you know, certain political organizations and the usual chatterboxes who usually have something to say on every other issue in society. But this time around, they dare not say that we have an illegal immigration problem. And that for me tells me that they don't have let me rather say, yeah, they don't have a love for the country like they claim they do. And that also then tells me that everything they do is not coming from initially a position of saying what is good for the citizenry, what is good for the patriotic South African. You don't even necessarily have to be a patriot, but what is good for a law-abiding citizen? What is good? Never mind political belief, religious doctrine, all of that. Just what is genuinely good. They don't come from that position, and that says a lot. That says a lot, especially to the other organizations who love giving them oxygen, particularly when there's social ills that need to be addressed and where social conversations need to happen.
Absolutely. And Ian, I want to come to you because there's two elements which I want you to help me tie together when it comes to these conversations. Number one, you cannot build a functional liberal democracy that protects life, liberty, and property rights if you do not enforce the law. And Koketso was absolutely right in pointing out that if you're an illegal immigrant, you've broken the first law effectively of why you're even here, which is gaining legal entry into the country. Now, this is not to say, before I know what's going to happen in the comment section, not all illegal immigrants do this, blah, 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 blah. No one is saying all illegal immigrants are bad people or they're criminals, whatever the case may be. But it becomes damn well convenient to be an illegal immigrant where there's no information about who you are. Couple that with, if you then do commit a crime in this country, the South African police services have such an issue with their DNA, their forensic, and that element of investigative policing that effectively you are a nobody. I can kill someone now if I was an illegal immigrant, and if I'm not caught immediately, really, there's very little chance of me being found. I could flee and go right back to my home country, presuming I want to do that, simply because I'm on no database, period. Ian, that's the part I want you to speak to because it ties these two issues together. The fact that SAPS just don't have the capacity to deal with legal criminals, so to speak. That's a bit of an oxymoron, legal criminal, but legal citizens who are criminals, and compound that with then someone being an illegal immigrant and not being on any database at all. How do you even find someone like that?
Yes, I think firstly, let's not sugarcoat it. If you're in the country illegally, no matter how good your intentions are, you're a criminal. It's that simple. You're not meant to be. You're not meant to be in the country illegally. I don't care the reason, and the reason why I say it so bluntly, because I'm sick of people making excuses for criminal activities for the sake of human rights, while our own people in South Africa are suffering to the point that they are. And I'm not saying all South Africans are angels, not at all. This whole Zama-Zama thing was caused because of ridiculously bad, corrupt, criminal South African leadership. That's it. So we need to be able to tell each other that it's not because of illegal foreigners. That's not the root cause of it. The root cause is that legislation that we have to our disposal wasn't implemented and used properly, and therefore illegal immigrants became such a big problem. But the point is, if you're in the country illegally, you are a criminal. It's that simple. How do we tie this together? Well, to give you an idea of how big the DNA issue is, last week we found out that the July stats for the DNA backlog in South Africa is 180,000 cases, okay? 180,000 cases backlog. You need to understand that for, let's say, for a sexual offense, you usually have, let's say, more or less 4 pieces of evidence that need to be tested. So you've got over 700,000 pieces of evidence that need to be processed for each one of those cases, okay, in that backlog. That is now considering, or hopefully someone is on a database where you can match it, or at least an arrest has been made. But remember, on top of this, the South African government, and specifically the Department of Justice and the President and the Minister of Police, specifically Ronald Lamola in this case, released 100,000 Schedule 8 offenders, so rapists, murderers, human traffickers, etc., in the last 5 years without having sampled them for DNA. They're back on the street. They went out on parole, okay? So they have created their own perfect storm. And they think sugarcoating it and saying National Intervention Unit and Special Task Force will be deployed. Special Task Force and NIU don't have the capacity to police everywhere. And on top of that, Tactical Response Teams, TRT from SAPS, are mostly deployed to protect ministers at this stage, which they're not meant to do. And so I can continue. The point is, Sihle, if you consider an illegal immigrant in the country, they are virtually untraceable. If you work in a space, let's say Khayelitsha Site C, when I was there when was I last there? 3-4 weeks ago. There are parts there where you literally cannot walk between some of the shacks. That's how close they are to each other. The problem with that is it's like alleyways that go on for kilometers and kilometers, and people literally have to walk their way there every day and risk their lives by walking. That's how dangerous it is, okay? The chances of you finding the attacker that stabbed or shot you when you were walking to work or walking your children to school is virtually zero in there. It's not going to happen. So I cannot overemphasize. Maybe I'm just too negative about it. The point I'm trying to make is if you're in the country legally, you need to go, you need to leave. We don't want you here. And we need to stop sugarcoating the issue. It's as though some people, I don't know why they pussyfoot around this idea, and then they mistake being honest and talking about what law-abiding means with xenophobia, because there's a difference. I'm not saying kill foreign people. I'm saying leave the country because you are here illegally. I'm saying implement the laws we have to our disposal. That's what I'm saying.
And let me take it one step further. Dumo, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but there is a relatively important question on the screen insofar as just giving us a sense of numbers, yeah? Look, at last count, and again, I say count in inverted commas because it's estimates, the country is effectively home to about 2.9 million immigrants, which is effectively about nearly just under 5% of the 60 million of our population. Of that number, as I've lost my data here, give me a second, I'm going to go back and refresh. There's between 1.2 and 1.5 illegal immigrants estimated in South Africa. So these are not paltry numbers we're talking about here. These are large numbers of individuals who have streamed into the country illegally. Now, I must reiterate this before I know it's going to happen. Those very same human rights organizations are going to be in the comment section, and the fact checkers are going to be in the comment section, blah, 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 blah. You guys hate immigrants, blah, blah, blah. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is a function of the rule of law. You cannot have a functional liberal democracy if you do not uphold law and order. And the issue of illegal immigrants is actually quite a serious one, because imagine if you were an immigrant who did everything correctly. You came through the country properly, you applied for refugee status, or whatever the case may be, and your process is hampered by two things. Number one, a South African government which must deploy resources to police, go after, catch, repatriate illegal immigrants, thereby seeing you be at the back of the queue. And number two, potentially corruption, where you're doing everything by the book, but an illegal immigrant can come in and maybe even pay their way into becoming a legal immigrant or even a citizen, because that's what's happening in this country. There are corrupt officials that Ian rightly pointed out who are, for example, selling passports or South African citizenship to these individuals. It is a massive network of criminality and corruption. Dumo, let me come to you, because I do think there's a part of this conversation which needs to be had here, and it's really this. For a very long time, we've been skirting this issue because it's a very uncomfortable one, and I get that. I totally get that. I mean, there are times where even I sort of like cringe, you know, when I listen to myself say something, because it sounds mean, doesn't it? But that's the problem in this country. We've almost tried to shame people from speaking God's truth simply because it makes one grouping or another uncomfortable. Let me be precise and specific. It's played out in the last week or the week before, pardon me, I think it's this week, in the city of Johannesburg, where a certain NGO interdicted the city of Johannesburg from effectively a cleanup operation that Joburg has been embarking on, which had the full backing of citizens. Citizens who said, hey man, we voted for you to do this, but this NGO, with money who we don't really know comes from, Open Society, I'm sorry, I may have said something there, which is doing things which the very voting public itself is saying, but we didn't want this. We wanted this government to, for example, re-establish rule of law and order in the city. And if that means getting rounding up illegal immigrants and enforcing the law, so be it.
Yeah, this is a very interesting thing because even in the libertarian circles, they've been discussing something like this. But I just want to say the libertarians are very split on this. There's a side that advocates for open borders and there's a side that advocates for restrictive immigration. And I've been reading Hans Herman Hoppe, and he advocates for restrictive immigration. Now, his reasoning is based on the fact that when people move from one place to another, right, it's not necessarily based on an agreement. It's someone can invade your house without you, someone can enter your house without you actually knowing or without your consent. And he said the same thing can happen when it comes to immigration as well, is that when people actually enter your country or enter a territory and they do so without getting consent or do so illegally, it's an invasion. The same way you do it with the house. That's how he puts it, right? So his solution is that there has to be some sort of agreement from people within the country where he says that, look, if you want to enter a certain country, there has to be some sort of agreement that you made with someone in that country to get in. And then that person, if that person will be liable for you. So if you commit any crimes and whatever, you know, that person will be liable. So therefore, it'll just also handle the amount of people coming in. But again, in South Africa, it's not necessarily like that. It's that we have the laws, but people are not enforcing them. So I think the problem now is that when we try to demonize one side and infantilize the other side, we're not going to actually get to the truth of the matter. The reality is that, look, it's, again, right, illegal immigrants, not all of them are bad and so forth. But the ones that do come in, they are those that actually do cause problems. And then some of them, they get arrested. And then when they get arrested, they get bail. And then are they going to honor it? Because they can easily skip the country. So that creates a lot of problems. So I think we shouldn't try to, in my opinion, demonize sides for the conversation, but rather we must just say, okay, when an illegal immigrant comes into the country, what are the repercussions? And then just weigh them up against, you know, if they don't come in, you know, and then see really what is the best way forward. Because I just think that I understand the concern for xenophobia. Yes, there is xenophobia, but usually you'll find the xenophobia is this opportunistic movement that takes advantage of legitimate concerns about immigration. So, for example, people will come in illegally, and then someone will say, hey, we need to fix the borders. And then someone will see that as an opportunity to get back at a foreigner that he doesn't like. And then that's also another thing that also needs to be monitored. So yes, xenophobia is a bad thing, but at the same time, I think we can talk about illegal immigration and condemn it without promoting xenophobia. And if people think that's not possible, then I don't think that they really want to have a discussion about it. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, and I want to make a quick point here. Actually, before I make this point, I'd sort of, just for full disclosure to the audience, I'd sort of told my guests that we're going to only do an hour of the show, and we're nearing the end of that hour. If they're okay with it, then I'm just going to ask for another 15 minutes, please. Usually we're a 90-minute show. If I can just see like a show of thumbs ups or thumbs down, if you guys can indulge me with another 15 or 20 minutes, then we'll keep going. Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Because I was going to say, you know, I totally get to Dumo's point. And I would say this, you know, a very famous Nobel Prize winning economist, Milton Friedman, had made the point. If your society is one where there is no welfare, in other words, the incentive to come to the country is not welfare and effectively living off of the sweat of other people. You come here because, you know, it's a open market insofar as jobs, you come here to work effectively, then I would be in favor of open borders, because you're coming here, costs me nothing, you're coming here to work, you're generating a service, you're providing some kind of good and service, pardon me. I'd have no issue with that. But insofar as you live in a country, or pardon me, South Africa is a country where it's a crony society, a closed statist economy where politicians and government picks winners and losers. Worse yet, for most poor people, they don't have the freedom to trade and build wealth on their own and are relegated to being poor under the control of politicians by way of welfare, social grants, and the like, then having an influx of illegal immigrants sees those people who already live under those constrained conditions having to compete with people who aren't citizens with very limited resources provided by politicians effectively. And that's where the source of anger is for a lot of people, especially poorer folk. Let me be precise and specific. If you live in here, Mlazi, or Khayelitsha in Cape Town, or somewhere in Johannesburg, and you're waiting in line at 4 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, at the local clinic, waiting for it to open at 8:30, and that line has, let's say there's 100 people in it, 40 of them are quote unquote illegal immigrants in inverted commas. And I say that because you don't know, obviously, in the line who's illegal immigrant or who's legal, but you can pick up, for instance, that these are people who are not quote unquote South Africans, maybe because they speak a different language or whatever. Of course, you become a little frustrated. Of course, you become a little frustrated because you ask yourself the question, are we accommodating limited social resources to people who perhaps shouldn't be accessing them because they are illegal immigrants? I think that's where the conversation stems from at a community level. And we dismiss this as xenophobia, and really it isn't. It's people living, and people who live a very different life to what you and I in the middle class live, telling you what their lived reality is like. Koketso.
Yeah, and again, yeah, I'm sure we've all heard these conversations. I remember listening to the radio once where they had the health minister, when it was still Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, who actually told the person calling in, this caller was asking this exact question: why is it that when we go to some of our local hospitals, you find a long line outside with people you can clearly see without having to do any digging or investigation that these are not South Africans? And the minister basically out and out just said, look, we can't turn people away. Well, what are we supposed to do? We can't turn people away. And you will find this particularly in border towns where there's quite the influx of, again, women who come in illegally for the express purpose of giving birth. They know that, right, they are likely to have a successful, healthy, they're likely to give birth successfully and in a healthy manner on this side of the border compared to some other areas on the continent. And so they're willing to risk it all to go ahead and achieve that. But again, this problem can be fully prevented by simply effecting good border control so that they aren't able to come into the country legally. Because, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't believe crossing the border with the intention of coming to give birth is an adequate excuse in anyone's sovereign land to say, right, let me through your border gates, right? Why? Because again, it doesn't bring value. It doesn't typically, it's not an economic activity, let alone a job function of some sort. But this is exactly it. If you can effect some good border control, you actually prevent a lot of the downstream problems we are faced with as society. Schools that are full, hospitals that are full, policing that is ineffective, right down to people working in Zama-Zamas who then go ahead, judging by what we've seen, potentially doing crime down the line. Everything starts off at the border. And it's important that we get that right. So like I mentioned, we avoid a lot of the downstream problems, not just for society's sake, but even when we look at things such as crime and all the other social ills that can be typically associated with people not sharing the same cultural values as you might, along with your members of community and your neighbors, etc.
Absolutely. Even as I say that, welcome to it. If you're just joining us now, we're in the final 15 now minutes of tonight's show as we unpack the issue of the Zama-Zamas, the rule of law in this country, and of course right now the illegal immigration that is issue, which is tied to this matter that often becomes a bit of an elephant in the room. Guys, do me a favor. Hit that like button. I don't know what platform you might be watching this on. It could be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, but please hit that like button. It helps grow the show. This is Liberty and Friends. Guys, I'm going to move us on a little bit because, and it's linked to an extent to this, because we've seen a very interesting phenomenon happen. As South Africans are talking about Zama-Zamas and are tackling them head on as communities, as South Africans are talking about the issue of illegal immigration and tackling that head on, whether they do it in ragtag groupings or semi-organized groupings and formations such as Operation Tutula. The one thing you're seeing form around this is an ANC as a political party pretending, in a sense, that it isn't a government or it isn't in government, that somehow it's in opposition and it too should be protesting these events. Let me show you this little clip, which I think left a lot of people baffled because, by golly, the ANC is in government. How is it protesting the ANC government? As I sort this out, guys, hit that like button, please. Do me a favor.
A shutdown. We do understand in Kagiso currently there is a shutdown. We do understand that one person has been killed. Reaction from the ANC?
Well, we have learned of that. We have also seen pictures that are doing circulation. We must just say to illegal immigrants, it's gonna, and Zama-Zamas, that they must start handing themselves over to the police. We can no longer guarantee their safety. The anger of our people has reached boiling points. They must now hand themselves over to the police. We can no longer guarantee their safety. Our people are angry. We can't guarantee their safety. If police don't act with speed, communities are going to be forced to act on their own.
Will you be part of those communities that will be acting on their own?
Well, I'm not. You can see what we are doing. We are having a peaceful march to a police station. But I'm saying, reacting to the question that you are asking, that it now appears as if this anger has reached boiling points. Now we need to appeal to the Zama-Zamas and illegal immigrants to start handing themselves over to the police, because our communities are angry. You know, when people are being raped and people feel that law enforcement agencies are not acting with the necessary speed, they end up taking laws into their hands. To avoid such instances, we need these ones who know that they are illegal in the country, who know that they are part of the Zama-Zama network, to hand themselves over to the police.
Well, he asked nicely, Ian. That should come for something.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. You're in government, you've got over 170,000 people working in the South African police service. You've literally destroyed it in 2 decades. Today, just for joke's sake, I made a list of police ministers for the past few years. So we went from Nati and Tetwa, let's call him Nati Flag and Tetwa. We went to Nati Firepool and Hleku, and then we went to Mr. Fix from there, supposedly Mr. Fix, Bheki Cele, and then we went to the current minister. And it absolutely baffles me to see the ANC just be there. Just the fact that they are there is laughable. I don't actually have a reaction.
And again, it's not just the ANC. Insofar as the contradictions, the internal contradictions. On the one hand, it's the ANC, who are in government, but pretending as if they aren't, acting like an opposition party, and in acting so, telling their own government that they should be doing what they should be doing, but not doing it at the same time because they're actually in government. Sounds confusing? That's literally what the situation is with ANC. You then have the third largest political party in this country, the leader of whom is a one red in tooth and claw communist, Julius Malema, the flip-flopper in chief, saying the following, effectively saying, to hell with it. I encourage, he effectively says, the illegal immigration because they are African brothers. Again, this notion that you hide illegality based on who is breaking the law, which is that selective leftist nonsense, that selective morality, as lefties often do. Listen to Julius Malema on the issue of upholding the rule of law when it comes to illegal immigration. Dumo, I'm going to come to you and then Koketso on this one.
Okay.
Sorry, Dumo, I was just saying I want to play the clip first, then I'll come to you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. No problem.
Sorry, it's just taking me a bit longer this evening. There we go.
Who's going to send Zimbabweans to the border when the EFF is still alive? No one. Not Mapanti Tiara Sangur, they are going to take people to the borders. No one can take anyone to the border. We are here to defend our Zimbabweans. They are at home when they are here.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you
guys.
see,
But again, this is the point I'm making. Flip-flopper in chief, where he now has to keep quiet when that very notion, again, I must quickly say this before people sort of muddy what we're saying here. We're not saying all immigrants are criminals. We're not saying that being an immigrant predisposes you to even criminality. What we're saying is being an illegal immigrant in and of itself is a criminal act. And of those illegal immigrants who are actual violent criminals, for example, who find themselves in gangs like the Zama-Zamas, those people, if anything, should be the first on the train or the bus to be deported. Dumo.
yeah. So just going to Malema's comment, it's just really funny because, you know, remember that whole thing at what's that mall, Mall of Africa, where he went to a restaurant and he was demanding that he sees the papers that South Africans are being hired, and then at the same time, what happens now? And remember, he did this because Action SA started actually gaining momentum because they were speaking about the illegal immigration issue. And now when he's in his EFF house there with his hat there and everything like that, different hat to Bheki Cele, of course, he then says that, oh, we're not going to deport anyone. No one should be deported. I mean, guys, this is the thing about the EFF and the ANC. They think South Africans have memories like fish, right? Like here you got was it Pulemabe, for example, who was saying that, you know, the Zama-Zamas must hand themselves over to the police because, you know, their safety cannot be guaranteed and we are part of the community. And it reminds of that Spider-Man meme, like where it's got these two Spider-Men pointing to each other. That's exactly what it is. It's like, Pule, why are you wasting your energy just walking and marching when you got Bheki Cele on speed dial and say, hey, Bheki, you know, can you not fix something here? It's all for show. It's a PR stunt, and that's it. So I think really the politicians here who are the loudest on this, like Pulemabe and Bheki Cele and Julius Malema in this case, they've got no solutions. It's all for clout. They need to look good. They need to trend on Twitter. They need to be seen on the news. They need all of those things. And South Africans who are critical and looking at this, they be like, man, these guys think we're stupid. They think we're dumb. And that's the reality. And I won't be surprised when the ANC shows up in a community and the community tell them to get the hell out. You know? And I would like to see if these mainstream media outlets will actually cover that, because this will be the worst time for the ANC to actually go out into the communities and hold marches. People are angry. It's not the best time to do it.
Again, you know, Koketso, as we look to taper off our conversation, and I made this point online and it annoyed so many people, but I said it's true. We're seeing perhaps a rise here in an almost conservative type South African. And it isn't a neat conservatism. You can't define it cleanly, so to speak, but it's an almost haphazard ragtag conservatism of people who have a gut feeling that this is South Africa, this is what South Africa should look like, and this is the South Africa I want to conserve. And there are these other people, right, who are destroying this. Those other people can be the political elites, Abo Malema, ANC, etc., etc. Those other people can be what they perceive to be illegal immigrants, right, the Zama-Zamas, etc., etc. There is a clear distinction being made by ordinary on-the-ground South Africans, and they do so in a non-racial way, because some of the images we saw coming out of the West Rand, Kagiso, and the like were white, black, colored South Africans in those mobs, if you will, rounding up these Zama-Zamas. So clearly race is not the issue. People are not being dribbled by what the politicians often use as the divider, race and, you know, poverty and the like. South Africans have got together and are saying, you know what, it's messy, it's haphazard, it might even be violent. I mean, someone got killed here, guys, when it came to that mob incident I mentioned. But there is something rising, bubbling up here, where South Africans saying, no, we're not comfortable with what's happening to what we consider to be our South Africa. We want to do something to protect it. And until maybe there is I'm struggling to articulate this because I'm trying to make 2 points at once. Let me refine myself to just 1 point. Until perhaps someone galvanizes this into political action, I'm putting it out there, and I want to get your take on this, that this is how it's going to happen. South Africans are going to ever increasingly bypass the political elites, bypass the chattering classes who are trendy, lefty, and woke, and literally say at a community level, no, we tackle our issues based on what we perceive as this community to be what we want for us. We want to conserve, if you will, what we are comfortable with as a community. And I'm willing to bet that it'll be ever increasingly more conservative and it will define South Africa in the future. Or maybe am I misreading the situation?
No, I agree with you fully. And it starts with the very basics of the very basics. Something like, okay, fine. How come kids can no longer play in the streets? I'm not talking about at night now. How come kids can no longer play on the street during the daytime like they used to back in our day, for example? Very basic question. We all know that it's not safe. Even your public park isn't exactly a safe space. And once upon a time it was. I think all of us here, we've got memories of playing outside without our parents worrying about us being kidnapped, etc., etc. So when these basic questions are asked by individuals, right, then they're going to start thinking about, okay, so something has clearly gone wrong and we're not getting help in rectifying it, so we need to do it ourselves. Now, I remember, I think it was my matric year. So this is back in 2008 now, when the first rounds of those so-called xenophobic attacks started happening. Right. I think that's when I took my first red pill around this, where, even as a young man, I was able to say, hold on a minute. You've got people who are genuinely concerned about their community. This was obviously now centered around downtown Johannesburg and parts of central Germiston, etc., where they were saying that our city is becoming a slum. And then when you go to the slum and you look around, you find no one there who speaks your language, and you find a whole lot of people who effectively created a whole country within a country illegally. So people ask themselves these questions, and when they try to do something about it, they easily get pushed back by members of the media and certain organizations. This is what's driving people back into more conservative values of saying, right, let's actually look out for our own, and let's not have a culture shift that is out of the control of us as a people. It's starting to happen. Well, not starting. I think it's been happening for a while. What gets interesting is how then the politicians come into play. I've always mentioned that one of the problems with illegal immigration, at the very least, is that people do what people do, and that is they start families, etc. What do you think happens when someone has been here, with let's use the example of a man who's been here with his wife illegally for the past 15, 20 years? It's a safe assumption that there's probably a 10, 12-year-old who was born here and everything, who has grown up in South Africa. This is the only country they know. And that's the person who's fast, if not already, but they're fast approaching voting age. And when they get there, you've got your ready politicians basically saying that, no, these are our African brothers and sisters. They are as welcome here as anywhere else. They're driving this message to a youth who are second-generation immigrants, or second-generation illegal immigrants, if that's the correct term to use. But they're driving that message in the full knowledge that at some point in the near future, there's going to be a large pool of potential voters that they're trying to appease. How is it that that child who's now at voting age is going to vote for a party that in effect is basically saying that we need to deport your parents back to the country they came from, which is a country you may have not even been to? That's the political messaging behind all of this. And that, I think, is one of the driving factors behind why someone like a Malema can so easily flip-flop. He's walking a thin line where he wants to appease the South African voting populace while at the same time trying to appeal to those who are coming up and are effectively second-generation illegal immigrants. Now, again, the conservatism in all of this is that you're sitting with, you're sitting with 10%, 20% of the country's voting population that wants to effectively change the culture. And that's not so easily achievable, especially in the face of people who are really, again, feel like the government has turned their back on them. And people who do feel that they are alone and on their own, they're going to come together and realize that they have actually have quite a lot in common. And that's when they're going to start doing in the necessary groundwork to protect all of that. I don't believe it's going to be driven by political values or racial values or anything like that. It's just going to be your standard, ordinary people looking around saying, look, you're my neighbor. How can we look out for each other? And that's when they'll realize that, right, the conservatism will start to kick in now. How can we look after ourselves as a community instead of waiting on experts with PhDs from organizations elsewhere telling us how to refactor our lives to meet the goals of a globalist future, for instance. It's happening naturally, it's happening organically, and that's the best way for it to happen, because at the end, when it does come into fruition, no one can actually come in and claim to be the original authors or claim to be the ones who pushed the direction that it eventually ended up going in.
Absolutely. Guys, I must begin to tap off. Ian, I'm going to come to you just for final comments and, of course, how the folks can find you. But final comments on the topic and how folks can find you. But before we do that, let me just maybe say this. We're going to have this conversation. I'm going to invite back the likes of about Dumo, about Koketso, and the like, insofar as I also want to pit them up against those who maybe hold the opposite view. The guys who hold, the sort of open society type ideas, who fund even NGOs, which are subverting sometimes law, at times using the law to stop effectively, the enforcement of the rule of law on the issue of immigration, because they have a certain political outlook. And I'm happy for us to have this debate on the show, because I think it's one which will dominate our politics, or influence our politics rather, for a while. But we've totally run out of time. But Ian, your final comments, and of course, post that, how do the folks find you and Action Society?
Yeah, thanks, Zama. Thanks for the chat tonight, guys. I think just final thought, it's crucial that we don't back down on this. I think what well, actually all four of us, but let's say the three of you have mentioned several times now is the fact that community members are speaking up. And I think we need to encourage that. We need to encourage people not to back down. And I think we need to encourage people to be absolutely fearless in their speaking up. I honestly think that the supposed grand parade of certain political elite has intimidated a lot of people to the point where they don't they don't use the opportunities they have to speak up and call these so-called leaders out. And I think we really need to keep on keeping on, and we need to make sure that we support people where they speak out. Then, Sika, I think just lastly, I think it would be fantastic to have those discussions. One of the first questions I would like to ask those very people that fund these type of movements, would any of them go and walk the streets alone in those areas where they support these kinds of initiatives? And I guarantee you they won't. It's kind of like Gun-Free SA, they advocate for a gun-free South Africa, but they all have armed response and hide behind high walls.
Absolutely. And that last point, absolutely important. And speaking about funding NGOs, Action Society, how do the folks get in touch with you? How do they, if it is a function of funding, how do they get in touch and get involved?
Yeah, please, guys, go onto our, and ladies, go onto our website, actionsociety.co.za. You can check out there how you can get involved, help to fund us. We basically oversee gender-based violence and violent child crime cases. And then we also assist with the investigation. So we'd really appreciate the support. If you want to follow us, check us out on Twitter and all the other platforms. And if you want to follow me, Ian Cameron 23 on most of the platforms. And look forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. That is Upra Ian Cameron, who is the head honcho over at Action Society. I will make sure to put their details in the description of this video. I just didn't have time before the show. Koketso, Puti, final word. And of course, how do the folks find and get in touch with you?
Yeah, final comment, I guess. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there's only ever been one instance where illegal immigrants have voluntarily handed themselves over, and that was for some or other reason to get a free ride back from whence they came. That is the only reason they would hand themselves over, to literally get a free ride and voluntarily get themselves deported because they've run out of money and they want to go back home. Yeah, apart from that, yeah, catch me on social media, I guess. You can always find me on Koketso Resane. That's on Twitter. Feel free to DM me, of course. Failing that, there's always the Manpatria podcast, which is coming back real soon. So, yeah, right on time, just as I got my voice back, and I'll have more of a beard again by the time we're back on the live screen. Yeah, and then I've got my website launching. Yeah, I got my dates on. It's going to launch on Women's Day. So yeah, I've been reworking my website for about 19 months. Now I'm finally ready to go live, and I'll be basically writing weekly on various issues, mostly tech, some of it philosophy and economics. And yeah, let's just see how it goes.
Absolutely. We'll be looking out for that. Shout out to you, Koketso, and thank you very much for having joined us on the show. Last but not least, Dumo, parting shot. And of course, how do the folks get in touch with the Manpatria team?
Right. Thanks for having us on, Cele, much appreciated. It has been a great chat. If you guys want to contact us, you can just come to our website, manpatria.com. There's a contact page there. And you can just type your message in there, send it, I'll get it. And yeah, all our content is actually held on our website now at manpatria.com, so you'll see everything there. And we're gonna start recording this coming Saturday. So if you want to join us while we record, just join our Telegram group as well. And that you can find on our website at manpatria.com. And thanks for the mods for actually putting that actually in the chat. So absolutely. I don't have to spell it out today. Thanks.
Shout out to Lars Silas, man. He's absolutely awesome. And my guests are super awesome. And thank you to all of them. And you'll find them, of course, as I said, in the descriptor of this video as soon as I end the show, as I get them off screen. There we go. Folks, thank you for watching. Remember, you're always part of Liberty and Friends. We always try and flight as many of your comments as we can on the screen. Speaking about your comments, please keep them coming through. I do actually usually sit for about 30 minutes after a show and read through them. With that being said, I will see you. Well, actually, I'm not going to see you on Monday because Tuesday is a public holiday. I'm going to give myself a long weekend and actually focus on some farm work. I'm so behind. It's ridiculous. But so my first episode of the daily Vuganazo, the morning analysis show, will only be on Wednesday morning. I hope you guys are enjoying Vuganazo. If you are, hey man, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel in particular. So with that being said, I'll see you on Wednesday morning for Vuganazo from 7 a.m. And of course, Wednesday evening for the Big Daddy Liberty Show. With that being said, guys, thanks for watching. You can find me on my website now. That's www.bigdaddyliberty.com. And if you want to support the channel, people are doing between 50 and 150 Rand a month, and it really does help in improving the quality as we build this thing whilst we fly it. If you want to support the show, all of that information is also in the website. That's www.bigdaddyliberty.com. With that being said, thanks for watching, and remember, as I always say at the end of every show, never trust a commie.